Chris Pappas, the Executive Mayor of uMngeni and a speaker at BNC4, as we call it. Chris, it's not quite in your area, but not far away at the Champagne Sports Resort up in the Drakensberg. Have you been there before?
I have, yes, a few times. It's usually to listen to the Drakensberg Boys Choir. It's just up the road, but a beautiful part to also go hiking.
Yeah, and we will have the Drakensberg Boys Choir at our conference this year as well. But you're a big draw card. A lot of our community have been saying they can't wait to see this young mayor who's shaking things up, who's introducing politics 2.0. And I want to maybe just start there. Your communication strategy. Where did this all come from? Is this something that that is just natural to you to use social media, to use Twitter, to use voice notes to your constituents?
I've always been interested in the power of communication. So I think it's just something that it's evolved. I suppose it's something that I've become good at, if I do say so myself. But yeah, it just interests me that and it's not just about telling people things. It's about all the other different types of things that happen, behind the scenes, information, intelligence. All of that is different forms of communication. So it's not just outgoing, but also inward communication as well. So yeah, it's something that fascinates me. Actually, when I was in the States not so long ago, the sort of the most fascinating, it was all really good, but the one that I really enjoyed was presented by the University of Arizona, and it was about disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation, and the different strategies and the science behind communicating and combating, counter communication. So it was, very interesting.
And typically, how much time do you spend communicating with ratepayers in uMngeni?
A good part of my time is communication. So, there's the traditional emails and WhatsApps and SMSs, but then there's also all sorts of other forms that I'm trying to sort of build into our system here, into the municipality as well. So it becomes less about me as the central point of communication, but the institution itself is able to do what I'm doing and am able to do as well.
We picked up your voice message from a member of the BizNews community who sent it on to us. And then, of course, on Twitter, where you posted a video of the ANC councillors handing out chips and bread, fomenting unrest. That kind of story would probably never, particularly because it's a local story, would never have surfaced in a national media. And yet, because of what you're doing, it's possible. Just unpack for us, if you would, in your words, what exactly went down.
So, I mean, the issue started the concern started as genuine, an electricity-related issue. The transformer blew, and we'd purchased a new transformer. We were ready to fix it, but in accordance with our strategy for electricity loss reduction, before we install blown transformers, we must have a look at what is wrong with the infrastructure on the other side. So meters, switches, fuses, etc. It would be irresponsible of us to replace something that was broken because of overload. So that was the issue. We always knew there was going to be some resistance, and there still will be, with the idea of before we fix your electricity, we're going to check your meter. And that's something that I'm sure there'll be resistance in future as well. But that's a small issue because it happens everywhere. Eskom does the same thing. Eskom did the same thing to the residents of Soweto, and that's like 1 million people. But it quickly went from that and was used then as by a political organization as a tool. Sorry, excuse me. And then, so it evolved from that. So the first sort of contact that the municipality had with the protest was at our gate, where the protesters were dressed in ANC regalia. Had an organizing committee that were dressed in ANC regalia that I met with, and many of the people weren't even living or affected by the issue that we were, the subject matter. So, from that point, I knew that it was no longer about the actual services, about those few houses that were affected, and we started to prepare accordingly to counter that or to combat that. Then, I think we were successful partly because we were able to react and communicate and plan and put in place mechanisms. but also because the opponent, or let me say the enemy in this sense, in terms of fighting back against a particular issue, was reckless, and they were reckless, and we used their mistakes against them. So you don't go distribute food to people dressed in your your political regalia, and you're an office bearer in a municipality to incite violence. That's just a stupid thing to do. And all the other things that they did in the using municipal resources to mobilize people in the communities. There's all sorts of things that they did that was just really silly, that we were then able to counter and then push back and control the situation.
This is interesting, Chris, because elsewhere in the country, and particularly here in Gauteng, there is an understanding that the ANC is losing power. In fact, it's getting weaker continually. And yet, in the rural areas, is it different? Are they still able to, do people still believe that the ANC will continue ruling the country after 2024?
I think it differs depending on where you are, but if you look at the election results of 2021, half of the municipalities in the province are no longer governed by the ANC. Well, more than half, actually. So it's an indication of, and we're largely a rural province. So the big urban areas, Durban and Pietermaritzburg, are still ANC, but at a less than 50% majority. They're relying on coalitions there. But in rural areas, many rural municipalities, like the one that I'm in, there has definitely been a shift. So I think, and I can't prove this scientifically, but it's just through my experience with voters, is that there's like a continuum of how people vote in South Africa, specifically rural black voters and township voters. But it's you vote ANC, then you don't vote, then you change your vote, and that's how it works. So I think we're in that stage now where people are not voting, particularly ANC voters, but that is sort of the area that we're in, which leaves a lot of voters up for grabs. People are wanting to be convinced. They're looking for an alternative. So I think that's the space that we're in KwaZulu-Natal at the moment.
In Cape Town, it started off with a coalition run or led by the DA. Today, the DA is very strongly running the Cape Town City Council, and indeed, it's like that throughout the Western Cape, or certainly for the Western Cape province. The fact that you are running the only DA municipality in KwaZulu-Natal, some people might suggest that this is a potential for a repeat of what happened in Cape Town. Is that your agenda?
Certainly. I mean, you don't go into politics to be second all the time, and you don't go into politics not to grow and to win. I don't think the DA in KZN is ever going to be a 50% party. That would be naive of us to think. But we are growing. We have grown in every election, and what that means is that the DA becomes the kingmaker in KwaZulu-Natal. So the stronger that us as a kingmaker are, the more power and influence we have over the coalitions that will emerge in 2024 in this province. The ANC is already below 50% if you look at the local election results. And there's a two-seat difference between the opposition and the ANC in the legislature. So I think this could be a catalyst, particularly at a local government level. But obviously, they say all politics is local. So if we can do things right here, if we can manage the confrontation that we have, if we can overcome any mistakes, because we will make mistakes. And if we can genuinely show progress that improves people's lives, I think it gives the people of KZN an option that they've never had before, and that's IFP or IFP or ANC. So we're here to say, well, KZN hasn't moved forward very much. You have a third option. Why don't you try then?
It also brings a lot at stake for the other parties, for ANC in particular. Is that why you saw the developments of this week? In other words, really dirty tricks being employed against you?
Yes and no. I just think the ANC is generally a dirty organization. It's a I don't know. It's a bunch of gangsters and thugs that it's become that over time. Let me not disrespect people who fought for democracy, but their legacy is no longer what the ANC is anymore. So yes, on the one side, I think they don't know how to be an opposition, and they're desperate for power. When you lose power, and I've noticed that in the position that I'm in, is that there's incredible power in being in government, whether it's access to information, the control of where budgets go, what the priorities are, the people who make up different committees that make a decision. So there's incredible power in being in majority or in government. That as soon as you lose all access to that. You lose access to the funds, the contractors, the work, the whatever it might be. And when that's what you've been surviving on, that is your existence. Your existence is not good governance. It is abuse of power to stay in power. Then I think they're wondering a little bit at the moment. But like I said before, you also have an organization that is built over the last 10, 15 years out of abuse of power, cadre deployment, and it's evident in the decline of services throughout the country. So it's not as if I'm trying to be unfair to them. I mean, if we're in the state that we're in because of the organization who's been a majority for a long time, poor decision making, lack of prioritizing. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question correctly, but I think it's a bit of a two-part answer.
What about at that local level? How are the finances of your municipality looking today as against a year ago?
So much better. Our cash flow is we haven't got a problem with cash flow. We have challenges with access to capital. I think that's a challenge for all small municipalities that are not entirely rates dependent, but are grant dependent. But we're working on accessing capital for quicker interventions, and there's a number of things we've put in place. But we have managed to pay off 2 out of 4 loans. We have managed to increase or collect just over 21 million rands with outstanding debts to us. We are up to date with our Eskom account. We've got cash on hand. Incredibly, usually municipalities our size, when it comes to the 1st of July and you get your first tranche of equitable share, most municipalities our size, that just disappears. It goes to pay creditors, it goes to pay Eskom, and it goes very quickly. So we got an allocation of 34 million rand a week ago, and there's just over 29 million rand in the bank making babies. So we are in a good financial situation at the moment. We have just completed our general valuation, which was 2 years out of date, which we did in record time. We kind of impressed the provincial government here. And that will also give us about an 8 to 12 million rand increase in revenue that will then be able to go towards maintenance. So we're looking okay. We're busy working on a plan. Councillor Passman was doing it to repay our last loan that we have that was taken to pay salaries a few years ago. And once that's done, we get an extra 5 million rand back in securities. So again, it's slow, but it's work in progress, and you can see a difference in what we're able to do.
Are the ratepayers appreciating it, given that 67% of your constituents are Zulu speakers? Can you get that message of good financial management will benefit them in the long term to them?
Yes. I mean, it's a lot harder to do that because someone who might live in a state or live in a suburban area pays their rates and they expect some sort of service from the municipality. And if you can see that the street lights are being fixed and the roads are being painted and the potholes are being fixed, even if it's as fast as you want it, or it's not your particular road, you can see it. You feel more confident that your money is going to the right place. I think it's a little bit different in communities where you don't have a high payment rate, whether it's low property values or high poverty or whatever it might be, which are in this case predominantly Zulu-speaking communities, our former township areas. I think there it's more about the life-changing interventions that you make. So, the free basic electricity. When we got into government, it was 50 kilowatt hours or 50 units of electricity free. We've increased that to 150. So it's not where you want to be, but I mean, I'd love to give, poor vulnerable houses more, but it's a huge increase in what we're giving people. We don't rate people if they're registered with us. We collect their refuse for free. So there's a whole lot of things that we put in place that to try and we're spending 1.5 million rand on free black plastic bags to give to households, because what are you going to buy food or 56 rand plastic bags at your local shop? You're going to buy food before that, and then you have a waste problem. So all these mechanisms are going to start coming online now that we've passed our budget from the 1st of July. And I think then you'll start, then people in sort of no rate paying areas will then start to see a bigger visible difference in their lives.
Very practical.
You have to be. That's local government. Local government's not about building the stadiums and giving out tons of food parcels. It's the things that you have to put in place in the background so that there is, I suppose, access to opportunity. So the more you increase that access to opportunity, and that comes in various forms, the more you can actually sustainably change people's lives, as opposed to the sort of grandstanding politics that we see, or the grandstanding governance that we see with stadiums and food parcels and halls and things like that.
I had an interesting interview this week with Jordan Hill-Lewis, who you obviously know well, another one of the DA's young lions. He's kicking open that door. He says he's going to be buying electricity from anybody who can provide it. They're making a big announcement in probably 10 days or so. From your perspective at the moment, if I understand it correctly, your electricity comes from Pietermaritzburg. Can you look at a way of, or is it possible for you to also buy electricity maybe from farmers and businesses or households who put up solar power to feed into the uMngeni system and then sell on from the municipality, and in that way help your financial situation? Is this a possible option for you?
So don't tell Jordan, but I'm waiting for him to kick in that door, because they've got a lot more money for lawyers and what they do down there. So once he's kicked in the door, we'll all come running through. But the answer to your question, so just to clarify, it's only a small part of the municipality that gets the electricity from Sunduzi, Pietermaritzburg, and that's the Hilton area. The other parts are either supplied by Eskom or supplied by us as uMngeni municipality, or distributed at least. So I'm working on two things. Firstly is that we're going to take over the Hilton electricity supply. All the law supports us taking it over, and it makes financial sense. It makes service delivery sense, and it's just at the moment it's a mess. So we've allocated 150,000 rand towards sort of legal support for that, so that we can draft the relevant papers. We can go to NERSA, we can follow all the different procedures. It's not a quick thing, but we'll do that. Then the second thing is that SALGA, or South African Local Government Association, is taking Eskom to court. They say that municipalities have the right to distribute electricity in their jurisdiction, and that wall-to-wall should either be the municipality, or there should be a service level agreement with Eskom. Because they don't have the right to. We have the constitutional right to distribute within our areas. For us, that would mean an increase in revenue, because it's a service that we can have a surcharge on, which would be beneficial to the municipality. So that is something that we would support, and we're pushing. We are now members of SALGA on the PEC with the IFP here in KZN. So we've kicked the ANC out of SALGA. So that's one of the things that we are pushing for here in KZN. But then there's the areas that I have supply over already, Howick and uMngeni, which is actually a loss to me. It's 85 million rands worth of losses every year, because the majority of people in the township area or the uMngeni area there's problems there. So we're trying to solve that, or at least reduce the load there. The framework that Jordan and them are working on, we've also drawn on work that Stellenbosch has done with regards to capacity generation amongst residents, business, feeding back into the grid. So that's not a short-term thing that we're looking at. There's sort of more pressing issues in terms of basic infrastructure, but it's not something that we've lost sight of, and we are following what they are doing, because once they've drafted the bylaws, once they've drafted the policies, they've got all the authorization. It's just a matter of copy-pasting it, changing the name, and implementing it here, which makes it a lot easier. And for municipalities that have been well established for a long time and they have the capacity to do that, it's a great help to people such as ourselves who've got multiple challenges and limited resources.
Chris, I had a conversation in the past week with someone from the PA, from the Patriotic Alliance, and the insight they were giving me was that Gayton McKenzie has gone to Central Karoo to go and run the Central Karoo municipality, because he would have been criticized, the leader of that party, for not having had any hands-on experience. Now that you have this hands-on experience at uMngeni, and now that you are making such a great success of it, are you looking at a national role within your party come 2024, when it looks like you're going to be a bit of a watershed in South African politics, and the need for lots of young blood to go into parliament?
So the answer is no. I'm focused here on uMngeni. I want to learn. I want to get things right. I want to serve the community that came out and put faith in myself and my team. Obviously, in 2024, if when there is a coalition government here between the IFP and whoever it ends up being, if there is a need for specialized skills, then I do need to consider that if it's going to make governance in the province better. But it's not something I'm putting my name down for or pursuing actively. I'm quite focused here. I think the coal face and the real change in South Africa is going to happen once we get local government right. And I want to be part of that and creating new systems and learning as much as I can about that. And fixing people's lives. People sit in parliament and whatever, and they make decisions, and it takes years to impact their lives. We have things passing on our desks every day that literally, make or break people's lives.
Well, you might think differently in a couple of years' time, when perhaps there's a cabinet post or something along those lines. Who knows? Other things, stranger things have happened. Just to close off with, though, Helen Ziller, the chair of the DA, has been very busy in exactly the area that you're talking about at municipalities. Now that she's trying to get a lot of the coalitions working and having some difficulties in a few of them, has she still got time to talk to you? Is she still keeping an eye on what's happening at uMngeni?
Absolutely. Well, I think keeping an eye is not the right term, but she definitely has time to talk. During these protests, I did give her a call to say, listen, Helen, I'm sure you've dealt with many protests in your life in the city of Cape Town. This is what I'm facing. What is your advice? And you draw on advice from various sources, and she picked up the phone and she gave me advice, and she was available when needed, which is a great source of comfort. You can call your folks, you can call your friend, you can call your partner, whoever it might be, but when you can call someone who has years of experience across the field, both politically and in governance, it really is comforting, and I was grateful for that.
We're looking forward to seeing you in the Drakensberg in, just over a month's time. Chris Pappas is the executive mayor of uMngeni. He's going to be a keynote speaker at the BizNews Conference at the end of August. And I'm Alec Hogg from BizNews.com.